Secretary of State Marco Rubio just fell apart before the U.S. Senate while testifying under oath, and he was grilled hard. Under questioning, Rubio claimed it's the official position of the State Department that the war in Iran is over. He also claimed that going to a UFC fight with Donald Trump was actually part of the negotiations with Iran and Pakistan, and that he was basically present at those talks just by being at a UFC fight. Let me show you how badly Marco Rubio performed when he was finally questioned about this illegal and disastrous war in Iran. Credit to Democratic Senator Rosen for grilling Rubio about being at a UFC fight instead of at the negotiations with Iran and Pakistan. Rubio responded, "What party? I wasn't at a party." "No, you were at a UFC fight, and we saw it in all the photos posted by you, the White House, and MAGA influencers. You looked like you were having fun while Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner were actually in Pakistan. They weren't even appointed by us. Who are these people?" Play this clip.
I don't know if one is scheduled for this year yet.
Thank you. With the remainder of my time, I'd like to remind the American people that as the Secretary of State, your main duty as America's chief diplomat is to maintain our relations with foreign nations. This is why I was shocked to see that you were at a party with President Trump in Miami instead of accompanying Vice President Vance to Pakistan for negotiations.
What party was I at? I was at a party?
It's publicly reported, and there's photos there.
But what party? No, but you're going to say that. I'm going to answer it. I'm going to answer that question because that's an absurd statement. I was not at a party.
When I finish my paragraph, he can answer.
People are going to slander me. I'm going to answer
Steve Witkoff.
Then Secretary of State Marco Rubio claimed he was essentially present in Pakistan while attending the UFC fight. Apparently, it was all part of a clever strategy by the Trump administration have the Secretary of State pose for photos and throw up odd hand signs at a UFC fight because that would send the right message about how serious the U.S. is in negotiations. Play this clip.
People are going to slander me. I'm going to answer.
Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, both of whom were never confirmed by this body to be America's diplomats, accompanied the vice president in the negotiations. Even Iran's foreign minister was not there, yet you were not, and you were not. I just feel that's embarrassing for us, and it's embarrassing for you. So, Mr. Secretary, Congress represents the American people. We have the power to confirm who represents America abroad. We confirmed you to be our Secretary of State. We confirmed you to be in the negotiations that are happening. And it's just unthinkable to me that you are missing high stakes negotiations or that you're not involved. It's sad.
Senator Rosen, your time's up.
So let me
Secretary Rubio.
You're 100% inaccurate and 100% wrong. Here's why. Number one, the Vice President of the United States was there, and he wasn't confirmed by us, and he was elected by the American people. Okay, he is the second in line of the presidency of the United States. He was present. Mr. Witkoff is the president's envoy for negotiation for peace deals. Mr. Kushner is a private citizen that serves as an advisor on these functions. They were the team that we sent to Pakistan. I was not at a party. Where I was is next to the president, because in the midst of those negotiations, I was in communications with them. And in fact, I think there is media reporting from that evening on how on multiple occasions I went into a back room, I came back out and spoke to the president and was constantly updating him. On that evening, I spoke to Mr. Kushner and our negotiating team and Mr. Witkoff on at least 6 occasions, including twice on a secure line from the phone they had access to over there. So you don't know what you're talking about. You're just
Senator Rosen, he has the floor.
I know your staff wrote up this cute statement for your TikTok video, but it's not true and it's not real. That's not what happened. Okay, I'm the National Security Advisor and Secretary of State. I was co-located with the president in the midst of a high-stakes negotiation so that I could immediately inform him about events occurring halfway around the world. I was where I needed to be at that moment because we had a very capable team on the ground in Pakistan, led by the Vice President of the United States.
Next, Democratic Senator Coons questioned Rubio about whether the U.S. promised China it wouldn't deliver approved weapons sales to Taiwan sales Congress already funded, and whether that was part of what Trump promised Xi Jinping just to get photos and FaceTime. So Trump could brag about how strong he is, while Xi Jinping tells the U.S., "You're a declining nation. Don't fall into the trap of trying to compete with China's rise." Great work, Rubio. Great work, Donald. I'm being sarcastic. Play this clip.
So it's under review under the White House.
Mr. Secretary, my concern is that President Trump has said publicly that arms sales to Taipei are a great negotiating chip with China. And my concern at a time when the PRC has been far more aggressive than they were in previous years, centerline crossing, circumnavigation of Australia, aiding Iran and Russia in their war goals and aims, frankly, literally helping Iranians target U.S. service members. I respect the importance of our having an open negotiation and relationship with the PRC. But in the meetings you were in Beijing, did the president offer to condition arms sales to Taiwan in order to placate Xi Jinping?
Well, look, I'm not going to discuss what was the president's words in a meeting, and suffice it to say that, that specific question you just asked, that's not the context in which the president has raised this in the past. When the president says it's a great negotiating thing, what he's really saying is it's because China, as you can imagine, always mentions this. Like, this is a top priority for them. They are constantly talking about Taiwan arms sales, but that in no way is what is holding up our decision-making or the White House's decision-making. It is something the president will have to decide on the timing of when and how that is executed on. It's been approved by Congress. It's been noticed. The money's available.
But Rubio wants everyone to know he was responsible for bringing peace between India and Pakistan. Except, Rubio, India doesn't agree with you. And one reason you got such a cold welcome when you arrived in New Delhi is because you've pushed India away from the U.S. great work. And on top of that, while you were cozying up to Pakistan and damaging the relationship with India, Pakistan turned around and praised Xi Jinping as the leader of the world. Great work, Rubio. Play this clip.
Hard stop at 12:30.
Okay, but I know, but you said a lot of stuff. I get to answer some of it. All right, so the first is the second is India-Pakistan. We ended that war. We were involved in helping broker that. Thailand, Cambodia, that's diplomacy. We've been very engaged in fact, as I sit here now speaking to you, I've got the Lebanese government and the Israeli government meeting at the State Department starting at 8:30 this morning for the fourth.
Next, Senator Booker questioned Rubio about the disastrous and illegal war in Iran. Rubio said, "What war? The war is over." Booker replied, "The war isn't over. What are you talking about? The American people know the war isn't over. We are not stupid. What are you saying? And by the way, you're saying this under oath?" Play this clip.
Billions of dollars of reconstruction costs just to get to where they were 6
Mr. Rubio, you keep telling us how we're winning this war. The president keeps saying,
well, the war's over.
Completely annihilated. The war is not over. And yet the American people see how we're losing at the pump and with their costs. And yet this thing still hasn't been resolved. Every day he tweets out, oh, we've obliterated them. We've annihilated them. They're going to surrender. But yet we still find ourselves spending billions of dollars a week.
Yeah, Senator
on
Booker,
war abroad.
You've gone way over.
It would be nice if we had hearings where people.
Thank you, Senator Booker. Senator Scott.
Then we heard from Senator Duckworth, who said, "Look, one of the big problems with this Trump administration is you use military force first and ask questions later. Nobody knows what you're doing. There's no planning, and you're not using diplomacy. That's supposed to be the State Department's job." Rubio responded, "Well, we did broker a peace deal between Azerbaijan and Armenia. Okay, sure, except you barely did anything there. You just took credit for something that was already resolved and weren't really involved. But sure, go ahead and take the credit." Let's play this clip.
Law dialogue, where I heard from folks across the Indo-Pacific and especially in Southeast Asia who are being hit hard by the same rising energy costs that are devastating American communities. And frankly, this administration insists on using military force as a first resort instead of a last resort, no matter the deadly cost of self-defeating impacts. Your budget request here would sadly perpetuate that trend and undermine the roles and responsibilities that you should be fulfilling as Secretary of State. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Okay, I didn't get to answer any of that.
I didn't ask you a question.
Well, she didn't answer the question. She just want me to answer? Can I answer anyway?
You may.
Okay. Well, but she made a bunch of points. I get to answer them, right? First of all, I don't understand this thing with let me tell you, we were just here, maybe you weren't here, we were just talking about it. We did a peace deal with Azerbaijan and Armenia. We just signed the TRIP agreement yesterday, actually, or last week we signed it. Last night I officialized it. That was diplomacy.
More from Senator Booker questioning Rubio right here, saying, "Look, America is supposed to be the strongest nation in the world, and we're stuck in a mess with Iran right now. What do you have to say?" Play this clip.
Before we even get to a nuclear negotiation, this regime is getting money to rebuild, purchase more drones, cause more havoc. And this is before we're even trying to get back to.
But I apologize. I don't understand how they're getting this. What revenue are you referring to?
Well, there's two sources of revenue we're seeing. One is the revenue from the Chinese. That's factually documented. And number two, the revenue that you're proposing that they should receive by releasing all of their highly enriched uranium, as well as in making a commitment about their enrichment capacities.
Yeah.
Hold on. And that was the exact deal that you guys vilified, that the president and you vilified President Obama from having.
Yeah. No,
So
I don't
here we
think those
have
are not
a
the
worse situation where
Those are not the same
where our
place.
adversary and our enemy, who's causing havoc in the region, who is funding proxies and terrorists, has discovered, thanks to you all, the power of shutting down the Strait of Hormuz.
No, they didn't discover. They knew that a long time ago, and they've done it before.
Clearly, we all knew that a long time ago. That's why this
And they intended to do this at
ill-conceived
some point
war
in the
should have
future
never
as well.
happened.
Yeah,
But
but
have made our adversary in a stronger negotiating position. We are the strongest nation on the planet Earth, and we're in a stalemate with Iran. And now we're begging to get back into a deal that you all
We're not
trashed
begging.
in the first place.
there's no one begging. I don't
Clearly,
know.
this is a
Senator
shame.
Senator Booker, your time's up.
But can
Senator
I just-
Rubio, since he's
I do
gone
want to
over, you
address
can
some of these points
respond.
because they go to the heart of the matter. No one's begging for anything here. The Iranians might be begging because their economy's losing hundreds of millions of dollars a day. That they are losing. Understand, Iran had street protests going on before all of this started. All of those factors, economic factors in Iran, are far worse today than they were 6 months ago when those protests were happening.
Then Senator Cohen grilled Rubio on the targeting rules the Trump administration has used to blow up fishing boats off the coast of Venezuela and in the Pacific. Notably, actual drugs being found on the boats isn't even part of the targeting criteria. You'd think if you claimed you're going after drug traffickers to stop fentanyl from reaching the U.S., the criteria would at least involve confirming fentanyl was on the boat. In my own view, even if that were the criteria, it would still be a war crime, because we'd still need to know if drugs actually existed rather than just being assumed. There's something called due process, in my opinion, but whether fentanyl is even on the boat isn't a factor at all. What do you say to that? Play this clip.
I want to ask you about Operation Southern Spear, the operation to strike boats in the Pacific and the Caribbean, that dozens of operations have now killed more than 200 people. Have you been involved as Secretary of State or National Security Advisor in discussion about the targeting criteria that are used to decide which boats we should strike?
No, but not because I've avoided it, but because those are largely legal decisions, right? So
But if you haven't been involved in discussion, as the National Security Advisor, are you aware of what the targeting criteria are?
Yeah, I mean, they go through so every strike has a legal officer on the deck that has to make a determination about whether the call is legal or not. And this is done by the Department of War, the way it's been done in other theaters around the world.
Here's what I want to ask you about. So you're generally aware of the targeting criteria. I'm not allowed. I know what the targeting criteria are because of briefings I've had in this committee and the Armed Services Committee. It's all been in classified. And I'm not allowed to discuss the targeting criteria because they've only been shared and classified. But I don't think I'm prohibited from describing things that aren't targeting criteria. So I'll give you an obvious example. Everyone on the boat is right-handed. That's not a targeting criteria. It would be ridiculous.
Everyone on the boat is what?
Everybody on the boat is right-handed. That's not a targeting criteria. It's obviously not a targeting criteria. It would be improper for it to be a targeting criteria. Here's one that's not so obvious and that surprised me. There's evidence of narcotics on the boat. That is not a targeting criteria. I have been briefed on Southern Spear since the first operation on September 2 and most recently within the last couple of weeks, and I've asked again and again, have the targeting criteria changed? No, they have not. What are their criteria? Here's what they are. I can't describe it here. But the presence of narcotics on the boat has never been a targeting criteria. Would you have any ability to explain? And the administration could have picked that as a targeting criteria. They chose items that were targets, that authorized the use of the U.S. military to sink boats and kill people. But they have not used the presence of narcotics on the boat as one of the targeting criteria. And I would suggest to my colleagues, if you go look at the individual files of all the strikes, and I've looked at the first 46, they are consistent with what I've just said about something that's not on the list of targeting criteria. Why would the administration not include the presence of narcotics on the boat as a targeting criteria
Well, look,
in Operation Southern Spear.
As you just outlined, I can't discuss the specifics of the targeting criteria, but I can tell you the one thing that is obvious is that the targeting criteria is not single source. In essence, there are multiple checks.
There are three elements to the targeting criteria.
Right. And all of it informed and infused by intelligence collection. In essence, they have to have true links. I can tell you they do walk away from strikes. There are multiple times that I've been aware. I'm not aware of every strike because it's not reported on a regular basis, it's delegated. Yeah. But there have been strikes that they've walked away from because it doesn't meet the criteria or because there's doubt.
I'm not saying that the strikes that I've reviewed don't meet the targeting criteria, but I'm saying how odd it is, especially since the administration always announced this is against narco traffickers. We've attacked narco traffickers. How odd it is that the presence of narcotics on a boat is not one of the targeting criteria. And I would encourage my colleagues, get the same briefing I've gotten, take a look at the strike files. You'll be as surprised as I am. Here's the second question.
More from Rubio here, questioned by Senator Shaheen, who asked, would you admit that lifting sanctions on Russian oil helps Russia make money, which they then use to fund their military and continue the war in Ukraine, the war you all promised to stop on day one? And it's far from day one now? Rubio, let's play this clip.
Benefited from this. So these are time-limited extensions that ultimately at some point will expire.
We've certainly benefited China and Russia's economy.
Well, China doesn't. I mean, China refines oil. They import a lot, but they refine oil, and
but they also benefit from Russian oil. But my question for you is: can you commit not to extend the general license again when it expires on June 17th?
Well, that ultimately is a decision that's made by Treasury, but I will tell you, it depends on the circumstances at the time. We would like to end it as soon as we possibly can because the underlying policy of this country has been to sanction their oil. These are time-limited waivers for the purpose of opening up more global supply.
I understand that, but if we continue to extend them, they're not time-limited.
More from Senator Booker questioning Rubio, this time about the fact that the U.S. cut all its Ebola response staff and its ability to catch outbreaks early. Seems like there's a clear cause and effect, get rid of all the early detection staff. And now there's a massive Ebola outbreak. What do you say, Rubio? Play this clip.
The United States has pulled back from a lot of its investments in those areas. Now with the crisis with Ebola, we see that the challenges that have been brought about as a result of our surveillance, early detection, and the like. So I'm just very concerned about what the administration's strategy is, because we're clearly seeing here that what goes on the continent of Africa directly affects our public health as well.
Well, first of all, I don't agree with that assessment. I mean, first of all, it's not about cutting back. As if the response here is not just how much money you spend, it's what results you're going to get. Now, let's talk about Ebola for a second. Ebola, the outbreak in Ebola was in a war-torn, isolated rural area in the DRC. That's where that began. Since that time, our response has been very quick, very rapid.
Well, so you're saying you did not cut early detection periods. I'm
saying that whatever you're pointing to as a cut is not the reason why there was an Ebola outbreak.
I'm not connecting the two. I'm simply saying.
Well, you are connecting them. You said that our cuts.
Senator Rubio, I'm not trying to get in an argument with you. I would really like to actually have my questions answered. So very quickly, we cut early detection when it comes to infectious diseases on the continent. Factually, this is not an opinion. We made those cuts. We cut early warning systems on the continent.
It had nothing to do with the Ebola outbreak.
So I don't need to tell you, Secretary Rubio, that we're living in a place where an infectious disease crisis anywhere is a threat to public health everywhere. The United States has made major reductions in these areas that have put us more at risk. If you're talking about this clearly Ebola crisis, there's other things and other cuts we've made, and you see it factually. Even our own State Department personnel that I've talked to are saying we're less prepared for a global outbreak than we were before. And my worry is, specifically in a budget hearing, is this budget makes even deeper cuts into the kind of things that could prevent the next outbreak, or, as we've seen unfortunately with COVID, have us more prepared.
Yeah, I don't agree with that assessment. I don't know who told you that at the State Department.
So just let's move on. My time is limited.
I know, but that's an important question. I don't want to eat up your time, but I need to answer that because I just don't agree with that.
Mr. Secretary, you can't even agree on the facts.
Because that's not accurate. I mean, again, you look at what we've entered into.
It's not accurate that we cut early detection.
Because those have all been repurposed in different arrangements that we now have with these countries. As an example,
I would like, for the record, because we're not going to cover it in my short time, if you're telling me we are as prepared or more prepared before the Trump administration came in, I'd like to see the facts.
I think when these reforms are finalized, which we're on the verge of doing, we're actually going to be better prepared.
But what Rubio really wants to talk about is where to invade next. how to distract Donald Trump with the next shiny object. For Rubio, that's invading Cuba. He says, it's such a failed state, and it's so close to the U.S. We need to invade it. Well, if it's such a failed state, why do you need a blockade and embargo around it if it's already failed? But sure, Rubio, go ahead and talk about your next excuse for another war that no Americans actually want. Let's play it.
So the fundamental challenge we have here is that Cuba needs to be, in order for it not to continue to be a failed state, which poses a threat to the United States, they need systemic and serious reform. They need to have economic reforms. And the question is, can they possibly reform, given the people who are currently in charge, both of Gaesa and of their government? And I think the answer is they can. I really don't believe this system is capable of reform unless new people take over or a new mindset takes hold. Now, we've engaged in conversations with them. We've offered them what I think needs to happen in order for their economy to recover.
He also says that when it comes to Venezuela, this is the first time their oil wealth isn't being stolen from them, when in reality, the United States is literally stealing the oil. And I'm not exaggerating. Donald Trump himself said, "We're taking their oil. It belongs to us now." Rubio, go ahead.
I'm not telling you that's 5 years from now, but it's been 5 months. So I want to be relative to that. Here's what I can tell you. For the first time, certainly, since 20, whenever, in the pre-Chavez era, maybe ever, and certainly since the post-Chavez era, the oil wealth of the country is not being stolen.
And finally, Senator Van Hollen summed it all up, I think, perfectly. Watch what Senator Van Hollen from Maryland had to say. Play this clip.
Chairman, and welcome, Mr. Secretary. This is your first public hearing since President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu launched an illegal war against Iran. Netanyahu said he's been waiting 40 years to do this. Turns out he finally found a president who was both stupid and reckless enough to join him. The war has killed 14 American service members, wounded hundreds more, and killed thousands of civilians. It's driving up the price of gas, food, and much more. Trump obviously doesn't care. He called high gas prices peanuts and said, "I don't think about Americans' financial situation." That's from the President of the United States. And all for what? The President told us 91 days ago that we had, quote, won the war in Iran. Last year, he told the country Iran's key enrichment facilities had been completely and totally obliterated. Was that false? Let's face it, Mr. Secretary, the Trump foreign policy has become a dumpster fire. This is the same president who's more interested in flattering Vladimir Putin than in protecting Ukrainian sovereignty. The president who lifted restrictions on the transfer of sophisticated U.S. chips to China, but came back from his trip there with nothing but ballroom envy. He tweeted about that the other day. This is the president who brought on Elon Musk to take a chainsaw to AID, which has enabled the current Ebola outbreak in the DRC. We've also witnessed corrupt crypto deals with the UAE royal family that have enriched the Trump family at the expense of our national security. We've seen an administration engage in extrajudicial killings in the Caribbean, hijack Venezuelan oil, threaten to invade Greenland, and weaken the NATO alliance. Here at home, a Reagan-appointed judge said that you and former Secretary Noem abused your powers when you locked up and still seek to deport students for protesting the destruction of Gaza. The Reagan-appointed judge said you did that, quote, primarily on account of their First Amendment protected political speech. Speaking of Gaza, the so-called Board of Peace seems to have run around. Meanwhile, while Senator Rubio once proclaimed that the U.S. must, quote, work to ensure that refugees who flee war, torture, and persecution are provided safe environments to live and thrive in. Now, as Secretary of State in this administration, you have capped refugees at a record low of 17,500, and white South Africans, Afrikaners, have comprised roughly 99% of those slots, Mr. Secretary. A race-based refugee system. At the same time, the president's preventing Cuban political refugees from entering the United States, even as you've imposed a near oil blockade on that repressive regime. The stated goal is to change the government there, but the only real change is humanitarian crisis inflicted on millions of people, not members of the regime.
Well, there you have it, everybody. Let me know what you all think. Hit subscribe